Okay, folks, today's sponsor of WTF is Audible. Please visit audiblepodcast.com/WTFpod for a free audiobook download. Do it.
Lock the gate!
Are we doing this? Really? Wait for it. Are we doing this? Wait for it. Pow! What the fuck?
WTF.
And it's also, what the fuck? What's wrong with me? It's time for WTF. What the fuck?
With Marc Maron.
Okay, let's do this. How are you, what the fuckers? What the fuck buddies? What the fucking ears? What the fucking knots? What the fuck nicks? How are you? It's Marc Maron. This is WTF. I am back in Los Angeles. I am back in the garage at the Cat Ranch doing my show. Just got back from New York City today, about an hour ago. I'm emotionally exhausted. I'm physically exhausted. I didn't get sick by some miracle of adrenaline and panic. The CD tapings were spectacular, and I can't thank you enough for coming out to Union Hall in Brooklyn to be part of that. We had great shows. They were interesting shows. Not one of the shows was less than an hour and a half, which means I've got to trim off 40 minutes or else do a double disc. I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to try to put it together as soon as possible before I start thinking twice about it. Obviously, there's some things that I was sitting on the plane thinking, fuck, what am I, an idiot? Why did I say that twice? I think it would have been that way either way, but I certainly appreciate all you what the fuck people coming out and hanging out. It's nice meeting you. Thank you for the presents. I got some nice gifts. I got some chocolates. I got some cookies. I got some soap. I got a Parmesan cheese grater. I have got the greatest fans in the fucking world. Thoughtful gifts. You know, it'd be easy if I were Doug Benson and you could just bring me weed or weed-related merchandise. But you know, there's more to Doug Benson than just weed, and you will find that out because we're going to talk to Doug in just a few minutes. Doug Benson on the show. And I know some of you know him, some of you don't. Those of you who don't know him, you're going to meet Doug. And quite honestly, it was sort of like me meeting Doug. I've known Doug a lot of years, but not unlike many of the guests I have here in the garage. I really didn't know much about Doug. And he was one of those guys where I'm like, what's going on in there? What's going on in the Benson head? I want to know what's up in the Benson head. So I flew back today. I was on the plane. I got upgraded to business class. And, I had some ice cream. I did. I chose not to get a personal viewer. So I watched the guy's viewer over my shoulder. I watched, I believe it was Salt for a while with Angelina Jolie. The best I could figure was she played an angry, bloody Houdini-like character. I don't know if I'm mistaken about that. I also watched on the main screen, Eat, Pray, Love, with no sound, and the best I could figure, it seemed like a very lyrical and visually stunning New Age odyssey into the heart of stupid. Maybe I'm wrong, but that was my take without sound. The great thing about watching movies without sound is you can sort of make them funny if you'd like. You can add your own dialogue. You can see things as funny. I think honestly, I'd go as far to say that most things might be better without sound. You just have to pay attention more, and it leaves more to the imagination. I did have a interesting experience in New York City that I talked about a bit on stage because I was exhausted. I don't know if you know that. Well, of course you do. That feeling of being mentally and emotionally exhausted. I was on the verge of sickness. I was running on pure cortisol and adrenaline, in complete survival mode. I was tweaked. It felt like I was coming down from an acid trip. That weird feeling where things are vibrating around the edges and you're not sure what's real and you're jittery and you think you're sweating chemicals or toxins. Well, that wasn't the case, but that did happen on certain drugs. But I got into an elevator in the building where my manager has her office. And in the elevator was a man. It was just me and a man who looked exactly like Spalding Gray. And I don't know if it was because I was exhausted or a little out of my mind. My first thought was not, that can't be Spalding Gray. He committed suicide a few years back. No, my first thought was, you pulled it off. You pulled it off, buddy. My lips are sealed. Your secret's good with me. Good for you. Good for you getting out. I'm looking forward to the show. All right. You take care. Good job. I felt like McMurphy in Cuckoo's Nest. You fooled him, Chief. That happened to me. It was a very interesting trip. It was a bit of an awkward trip. I rented a place in Brooklyn, on the west side of Brooklyn on Prospect Park, was recommended by a fan. It was basically a basement apartment in a woman's building, and it was just very interesting. It had a unique theme to it. It was sort of, when bed and breakfasts are sort of intrusive because you have to deal with other people. But when you rent a place in someone's house, it was its own apartment, but it had its own decor. It had her idea of what chic or what would be, but it was very Americana. But I don't know if it was on purpose. She gave me the keys, and she said the idea is there's 3 doors, and these each key there is red, white, and blue, but the keys were clearly sort of pink, yellow, and a bluish color. But nonetheless, the theme was red, white, and blue. I get in there. There's a small shrine to the fallen firefighters of 9/11. It was just interesting to be in another person's life, even though I was renting the apartment. And then it was odd because the heat kept going on at weird times and not enough heat. So I felt like I was being in some sort of timer oven. And then like when I called her, I didn't know what the proximity to me and her life was. And then I called to see if I could get more heat, and I called on my cell phone, and I heard her phone ringing above. So I don't know how much surveillance I was under. I hope I cleaned up, and I hope I behaved properly. I don't have a lot to share with you right now because I'm drained, and I would like to just talk to Doug Benson if that's okay with you. But again, thank you so much for coming out to the show. I was very grateful. It was very humbling to know that people actually like me and tolerate me and are now coming to clubs to see me. And actually, if I can drop some names, Ira Glass came to the last performance with his wife, and it was a pleasure. But I'll tell you one thing, knowing Ira Glass was in the room, there was a lot of pressure in my mind to try to be as smart and funny as possible, because at that moment, I didn't think I was smart and funny. So I said things on stage like, is that the proper word usage? Which is not... You don't need to be saying that on stage, really. All right, let's talk to Doug Benson. Let's get underneath the cloud of smoke that most people think defines Doug Benson, and see if we can we can talk about other stuff. I'm just curious about his life. I really don't know about him. As you heard at the top of the show, as sometimes we do, this show is brought to you by Audible.com. And you can go to audiblepodcast.com/WTF pod and get a free audiobook download on me. Now, you can only do this once, and you can only do it in the U.S., from my understanding. But, they've got thousands and thousands of titles. And if you like this kind of entertainment, you like to plug things into your ears and listen to people talk, you can do that at audible.com. If you go to audiblepodcast.com/WTF pod. That's audiblepodcast.com/WTF pod for your free audiobook download. Right now, if I'm searching for books here at Audible, and they've got tons of titles. As I said before, many people who have been on this show have things on audible.com, but I'm browsing right now, and I'm looking for a book that might be useful to me. Oh, here's one, Codependent No More, How to Stop Controlling Others and Start Caring for Yourself. That's what I need to do, and I think I'm going to take advantage of my free audiobook download at audiblepodcast.com/WTF pod and get that book. So you get whatever book you want, but I need a little help right now. That's audible.com, audiblepodcast.com/WTF pod for your free audiobook download. You can only do it once, and you got to live here, from what I understand.
As a comedian and as a
human,
I complain quite a bit.
Now, how does Doug Benson express infuriation? Because I sense it would be just something like you just did. Hey, could you not do that? Or
oh, that's horrible. I think it's when you're hanging out with other comics, that's all you do, but you do it in a way that you're entertaining each other, or at least, agreeing with one another.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this club was so terrible, but what was terrible about it doesn't match what's going on in Darfur or any of the other impoverished, horrible situations in the world. Yeah, you just get mad. You get mad because it's your situation, and it's like your shitty condo that you have to stay in or whatever.
Depends where you're playing, I guess.
Yeah.
I've never been to a condo where there are starving, bloated kids around, or or
Yeah,
anything like.
and you still complain about it.
Yeah, it's all relative, I guess. I haven't complained about. I try not to complain much about anything lately, but I did a gig where. Now, let me ask you honestly. When you do shows, I mean, you're on the road fucking what, like 3 or 4 days a week?
Yeah, generally. I'm trying to dial it back a little. I'm trying to also stop saying dial it back. But yeah, I'm going to be in 2011. I'm not going to go. I'm going to do shorter runs. Like just do a couple cities one night each and then come home.
Yeah.
But as it stands right now, I've been doing comedy clubs most weekends. Like this weekend, I'm going to be in Dallas, Texas.
4 shows?
Yeah, 2 Friday, 2 Saturday. I don't like 2 show nights.
Why? It's just too
I just
exhausting.
like to do one and be done with it.
Now, are you finding that you're selling out everywhere? I mean, is it really happening?
Yeah, it's good, but between the recession and my crowd being a little flaky because they don't, especially that's what I don't like about comedy clubs on Fridays and Saturdays is that the stoner crowd just goes, oh, that seems like a hassle because it's always a comedy club in a mall and there's more than one show. And there's a drink minimum, and it's
they've already been like, I'm tired.
It's already like, oh, why bother? I get messages on Twitter all the time. Why don't you play
my house?
This cool place, or my living room. What's wrong with doing a show in my living room?
Just come over, dude.
Yeah, I mean, if I could do it, I think people would be a lot more satisfied with my performances if they just paid me a few bucks and I came and hung out with them in a smoking circle. Like if I could just travel around doing that. Just being a guy who shows, I'll show up and smoke with you.
You all give me
a few bucks.
See you later, you guys.
Yeah, and it's much easier to entertain in the smoking circle because everyone's high instead of just some of the people. There's no drunks. There's no drunks in the smoking circle usually.
How about in your crowds? I mean, do you find that, like I'm finding now, but we're certainly, it seems like we're running in different circles to some degree, that the more, like the people that I'm drawing, literally, like they get surprised when there's drunk assholes in a crowd. Like what is that guy doing here?
Yeah, and they apologize for their town.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they think that's the only place where people get drunk. Like that's the problem with the whole comedy club setup. I like a place where drinking is more optional, like almost like you have to go out of your way to get a drink.
Right.
Like you have to go to the bar.
I'd rather just do small 200-seat black box theaters for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and let them sell some beers in the lobby, let them make that money. But
right.
Like the whole idea of the 2-drink minimum.
Yeah.
You just get a lot of people that, they're out, they're excited, and they get for their 2 drinks, they get Long Island iced teas or something, and then they're hammered by the time the headliner comes on.
Oh, they're fucking obnoxious.
I've had in the past year, I've had at least on 3 occasions, someone while they're being thrown out yelling, the show's going on, they're being thrown out, and they yell, "I'm your biggest fan."
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, you're my most fucked up fan right now, and you're ruining it for everybody.
Thanks for coming, biggest fan.
Yeah.
Get him the fuck out of here.
And it's like, it's so terrible having to throw out somebody that really, really loves you and just overdid it. They didn't plan their night correctly.
Right. They didn't pace themselves. Mm-hmm. Well, I had a guy that came up with his brother or something, or his cousin in New York at a live WTF taping. They said they loved the show, and they were like up in my face, excited to be there. And the guy he brought, his brother or his cousin, the show's unusable. He fucking pissed Louis Black off so much that, and I had Rich Voss and Bonnie McFarlane on, and the whole thing just went down the crapper. It was a lighthouse, and this guy just like started mocking Louis, like how Louis does his hands, like
yeah.
The guy just started going like mimicking him, which is probably the worst thing you can do to anybody.
This guy was an audience member?
Yeah. It was a fucking nightmare. So I want to put Doug Benson into context because I was trying to think, like, I knew you were coming over, and I know you don't have these kind of conversations. Like, I don't know that we've ever talked for a long period of time, and I'm not going to bring up the story about the blender. I'm not going to bring it up again. But I do want to try to figure out when the fuck I first met you, because I remember, what I do remember is you had, you looked the same almost exactly, except you had like Charles Nelson Riley glasses. Didn't you have very big?
Yeah, I used to have big glasses and different colored frames, like purple and red, and it was ridiculous.
You did that thing for a while.
But stupid.
But that was like 89, 1990. I remember the Santa Monica Improv, and you were sort of like, I don't know if anyone really puts you into a generational context, but you started in LA with Spade, right? Or Spade started in Arizona, but you guys were buddies, weren't you?
I saw him around. I knew him. Like a friend, a good buddy of mine was pretty close with Spade at that time. So I knew who he was and saw him around, and you know, and to this day when I see him, he says hi. But we you know, we've never been super close.
But weren't you guys starting out around the same time? I mean, who was in the crew here? Because
yeah, kind of. I fell into the whole kind of San Francisco scene pretty quickly with the you know, Greg Behrendt and
so when I was there, like 91, 92, I got
Laura
there.
Milligan and Margaret Cho and
Ebby Parker,
all that gang.
Yeah, and right, and then me, Blaine, and Patton showed up, and you were up there a lot.
The first time Blaine and Patton showed up, it was so funny to me because they were like, it was like a kind of like villains or something walked in because they look so funny together.
Yeah.
One short round one and one's tall skinny one. You know, they look like characters out of a Roald Dahl book or something.
Yeah.
And they'd come from where did they come from? Baltimore. And they you know, I quickly learned they were super nice guys, and I've been friends with them ever since. But at first, they were just kind of like, "Who are these guys?" Because they were both very cocky, and you know, and actually really funny,
right?
But in a way that was just kind of like, "Whoa, what's this about?"
Yeah.
And Behrendt, the first time I met him, he was wearing like a headband, and
dude, with the muscles.
He had his crazy eye, and just like he just really had cut an intimidating figure.
Right.
And the first time I saw him, he came up to me, he was like, "We're doing the same joke." Right. I'm like, what? And then he proceeded to be very nice about it, but it was very confrontational at first. And it was just about how we both had a joke about, you know, my girlfriend complains that I'm smothering her, or at least that's what it sounds like from underneath the pillow or something like that.
That was the joke?
That was the joke. It was just like smothering.
Yeah,
like, wow, really hard to get to that punchline once you've said you're smothering me. So you know, but he was super cool about it. And then we became friends and we had lots of, crazy road experiences together. But I sort of, the San Francisco area used to have like 5 or 6 clubs in the suburbs around it that you could work for a full weekend. And then San Francisco itself had the Improv, the Punchline, and Cobb's.
Oh, that's right.
So between all of those, I was going up to San Francisco for about a week out of every month for several years.
What, you did Tommy T's, Roosters, or, and then did you ever do those gigs like out, like the Sunshine Saloon?
Yes, and they had,
where was that? Like Stockton or, I can't remember where.
Yeah, there was a couple Sunshine Saloon things, I think, and then there was like Rooster Tea Feathers.
That's it.
And
that's still
going, and I like doing it.
Yeah, me too. I'm going up there in February or whenever.
Yeah, it's a nice little room. I always have fun there.
That Sunshine Saloon, I still remember it, man. It's a small bar, right?
Yeah.
Am I thinking about the right place?
Probably,
Did you ever do
like
that?
It's a weird, there used to be a lot of gigs like that where they would just put a microphone in a corner somewhere and there's barely any lighting or...
The worst. Did you ever do the UC Davis? That gig? You remember that gig? University of California, Davis? It was in a huge bar.
I don't think so.
Oh, I had a bad night there one night. I decided that I needed to take to clean out my body, like in a healthy way. Mm-hmm. So I drank this herb tea of this stuff, like I think it was called Cascara Sagrada or something. It was a natural laxative or something, but I didn't know the dosage. So I drank it like, you know, the afternoon I did the show, and literally I had to stop my show to go have explosive shit.
Really?
And then get back on again.
The MC just stalled for a while?
Yeah, I told him to come back up. I'm in trouble. And then
That's fantastic.
Have you ever had that happen?
I've never had to leave the stage to go to the bathroom or for any reason other than I've left the stage on several occasions to actually go into the crowd and yell at someone for being obnoxious. Like I've actually, You
yelled?
Yeah. Yeah, I get really mad. I get really mad when people won't shut up and then the people running the club won't get them to or won't take them out. So I'll take matters into my own hands sometimes. And it gets scary because I'm like way too ballsy with like big drunk dudes.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling, but I cannot imagine what a Doug Benson crowd must feel when Doug gets angry. I really have to assume that, given the state they're in, they must be like, oh no.
It's an interesting dynamic. It gets very quiet. Like that's what I hate whenever somebody gets thrown out for some reason.
Yeah.
I hate that few minutes of where you have to just keep going with your act, but no one's thinking about anything other than what just happened.
Do you ever feel like you pussed out? Like sometimes when they throw them out, I feel like I have not done my job.
Oh, yeah. I mean, when people say if you can't handle a heckler, you're not a good comic, that to me, that's ridiculous, because some of the best comics ever would never be good at handling
No, that's true.
hecklers.
That's true.
Like a Maria Bamford doesn't handle hecklers, and there's hardly anybody funnier than her.
But when they come to shut a guy up that's right in the front fucking row, there's part of me that's like, oh, now I just look like a bitch.
Oh, no, I get involved.
Yeah, me too.
I don't be I try not to be a bitch about it. I try to be like, hey, dude, and I always explain to the audience, this person probably had too much to drink. They're probably a perfectly nice person normally, but now they're being a douchebag and they gotta go because they're ruining it for especially nowadays. People pay a lot of money to come see a show like that.
Yeah.
And to have some guy or girl just randomly yelling shit and ruining it.
Yeah.
It's like, people thank you after.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And I meet everyone at all of my shows. I don't ever split after my shows.
Me neither.
So sometimes it's like an hour of hanging out, but I really think that people deserve that because
Oh yeah.
you don't get that normally. You
And
go
with
see the headliner these days, it's always somebody gets shuttled away after it's over, and it's like the meeting the person's a lot more fun than seeing their show. If they're a fan, they've already probably heard a lot of the jokes. You know?
Yeah, I'll lounge around before the show. Sometimes I'll get up on stage before the show starts. And just
I don't do much before the show stuff because I just have this like theater thing in my mind that like the first time they see you should be when you walk out and start your act. You know?
Yeah, that's probably good. I mean, I think that's a classic way of approaching it. But like,
it is nice to go chat with people ahead of time too, though.
But I went and did a gig in Pontiac, Michigan, where it was upstairs at a rock club, and I got there, and it was like 30 miles outside of Detroit, and the place, like where it was at, looked like a ghost town because it was night, and there were people outside. The place wasn't open. They were huddled together, and I had to get there and huddle with them and try to figure out how the fuck to get in the venue. And then I literally was standing online with my audience to get into the venue, and I'm like, I don't have to stand here. And I walked up, and then there were no chairs set up, so I'm literally setting up the room with my audience, and then I got on stage.
That's awesome.
Well, it was a little awkward, but it worked out, you know? They were sweet people.
You know, they have a story.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
It was nice. I mean, but...
Especially if you die young.
Yeah. They're like, hey, wait a minute.
That guy was great. We set up chairs with him at his own show. Now
really
he's
cool.
gone.
Oh. Now, but like when you do a bad show, though, do you ever get that? Do you still suck sometimes or no? I mean...
I don't know. I mean, my
It's
whole
pretty
thing
steady.
is not trying very hard.
Right.
You know, so I've set the bar so low.
But you do, but I mean, you do, that is your act. But do you ever walk off and go, I don't know if I want to socialize this one?
Well, yeah, sometimes, especially if there's some people that were a problem that never got thrown out and it just sort of got resolved by me insulting them or something.
Right.
Because I always feel, I never like having that conversation afterwards, you know. I don't want to talk. I don't really. That's the thing about the drunk people really gets to me. Like,
Yeah.
Because they're so hard to, you can't really wrap it up with them. You know, like if somebody's super stoned, you could just be like, "Hey, man, give me a second. I'm talking to this other person." And they're usually pretty respectful, but drunks,
No, the worst.
they don't know.
Now, when I can't, like, I don't know many people that grew up here. So where did you grow up in this area?
I grew up in San Diego,
Oh, okay.
and then, but just as soon as I was, after a few years of junior college, I realized that I don't really need school to
Junior
pursue
college. That's a 2-year
show
college?
business.
Right.
Yeah,
But
junior college.
But you knew you wanted to go into comedy after you got out of high school?
No, I had no idea. I was a huge fan of comedy.
Who were your guys?
Carlin and when I was little, I listened to Bill Cosby a lot and Steve Martin. Then when I was in high school and college, I just stayed up and watched Letterman every single night. I loved that guy from the get-go.
Oh, yeah, me too. And you must have been there. You're my age, right?
Yeah, roughly.
So we saw it from the beginning. Like, I remember I used to be in college, stoned and like wait up to watch him. I mean, I remember being with girlfriends going, we gotta watch Letterman, at 12:30.
Yeah, I think I watched the first Saturday Night Live because George Carlin was the guest host.
We were younger then. I was like 12 or 13, right?
Yeah,
I remember.
but I stayed up every Saturday night.
Me too,
I'd often fall asleep before it was over, but I tried to stay up.
Now, I'll admit to being a Chevy Chase fan when I was a kid. I thought he was hilarious.
He was the best. I had the Saturday Night Live album that they put out.
Yeah, I had that too with the purple goo title.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I listened to it over and over again. I mean, it's a fun album to listen to because there's a lot of music on it.
Yeah.
Every song parody they did was on there.
Do you ever listen to it recently?
No, but I bet you I'd enjoy it. I used to be one of those things, teenagers, you always have things that you repeat with your friends all the time. Me and my friends used to say, painful rectal itch all the time from that.
Yeah.
With a name like Smuckers, It has to be good.
Yeah, I remember that shit too. Were you a stoner in high school?
No, I didn't. That's the thing is I didn't really discover pot until I started doing road comedy in San Francisco specifically. It was the week that I was the feature act. Brian Posehn was the opener, and Greg Proops was the headliner.
Oh my God!
Punchline.
I just got high at hearing
Punchline in Walnut Creek.
Oh
And yeah, so we would drive out there every night and do the show and get crazy baked in the green room or
with
outside
Greg's
or
pot?
whatever.
With
Greg or Brian's, because
Yeah.
I was for the first 5-6 years I smoked pot. I was just a mooch. I only smoked when other people had it.
How old were you, man?
I guess my first time I tried it once or twice in high school, but the real one time in high school, but the real getting into it and smoking all the time wasn't until I was 28 years old.
That's amazing. It's like people who start smoking cigarettes late, but I think smoking pot's better. I mean, I can't begrudge you for that.
Right.
It was a gift. It was literally a natural God-given gift to you and your career.
Well, yeah, but I didn't, I certainly didn't, it just sort of seeped into things because stand-up became more and more about just getting up and talking from your own point of view.
Right.
And not necessarily trying to put on an act or just write all jokes, So.
I kind of remember you being like more joke, like heavy.
Oh, yeah.
When you were younger. But it's so weird to me, though. So when you were in high school, when you smoked pot, were you like, fuck this shit, this freaked me out? Or were you not a drinking guy? Were you, like, did you come from a conservative family? A lot of questions.
Well, my parents smoked cigarettes quite a bit. Like, let's drive to Arizona with the air conditioning on and the windows up, and both my parents smoking the entire way.
On a camping trip?
Like my mom smoked, while she was pregnant with me.
Yeah.
And look at how I turned out. But then, so I never got into cigarette smoking, but they also were never... I had the older brother that did, pretty much everything by the book wrong.
How much older?
3 years.
Oh, so he took the hits.
So he got into all the trouble, and I was just the angel because I was nerdier than him, so I was just more into just staying at home. And like I didn't move out of my parents' house until I moved to LA. So I was like 22 when I finally moved out of the house because I lived in like the downstairs of my parents' 2-story house.
Shag
so
property?
I had my own apartment downstairs. I had girlfriends come stay over and stuff. Well,
Did
my
you have your own
parents were
door?
sleeping upstairs. Yeah, my own 2 doors. A door to get into the area where my room was, and then a bathroom and a room all to myself.
So you were set up to party, but you didn't.
And my mom would come in and clean the room every day. It was like living in a hotel.
And where was your brother's room?
Well, he had moved out by that point. When
What's his name?
I was in Hal.
Hal.
He lives in Seattle now. I'm going to
Hal
see him
Benson?
in a couple days. Yeah.
Did he straighten up?
Well, yeah. I mean, he was never that bad. He just, he just got into a lot of situations that were, the kind of stuff that, it never happened to me.
Yeah.
Like he was on the football team and he was a surfer and he had a Mustang that he was always working on in the garage.
Oh yeah.
My first year of high school, he was a senior and I was a freshman. And I didn't get hazed or hassled that much because he was
watching out for you.
He was this big guy on the football team, and I didn't have to run to him or use his name or anything.
Right.
It was just people just knew,
that you were Benson's brother.
That's his brother. And,
Yeah.
Why would I get involved with that?
Did the jocks? Were you like some sort of like mascot to the like? There.
Well, that
he
was
is.
the worst thing is that my brother's friends would come over and suffocate me underneath the beanbag chair in the living room and shit like that. But I was definitely, I was definitely not athletic in high school, and so that's what kind of pushed me towards the arts.
And then you moved.
Making people laugh was a way to get attention.
That's so funny because I was an older brother, and now I see you as a younger brother, which is a whole different set of affairs. It's a whole different fucking thing.
Yeah, a younger brother, but also kind of almost like a single child because my brother, he flew the coop at like 18.
Had enough.
And then I had 5-6 years of being the only child.
Did he at least have good records and shit? I mean, was there anything that you were able to glean from like did he turn you on to anything that?
Well, he was cool. He put a 8-track stereo in my car for me. And we just didn't have the same interests.
Yeah.
But now as adults, he's crazy about me. Like,
yeah.
He comes to see anytime I do a show anywhere near the Seattle area. He comes.
Does he have a family or?
Yeah. He's got a wife and 2 kids, and
Uncle Doug.
one of his daughters, one of my nieces, is getting married next March to the drummer in a Christian metal band. So I'm definitely scheduling some road work around that wedding.
Is your
so I can
brother
go.
Christian-y?
No, and the band's not that Christian either, as I've been told.
That's their angle.
Yeah.
They're going after the Jesus kids.
I don't want to screw up their name, but I think they're called Zombie Hunter. I think.
which could be, I don't know. Jesus was kind of a zombie, wasn't he?
Yeah, but they're like, I think that the Christian part of it is just that, like, that they are Christians, but they don't push any kind of Christian beliefs through their music.
Right.
So they're only a Christian metal band in the sense that they're all, they all believe in God or whatever.
Now, when I fucking, like, I'm just trying to remember, there were just these, like, I have these fragments of my own past that mix with yours. Like, I remember you were around, like, there was a crew that sort of hung out in L.A. when I got, tangled up with Stacey Nelson, the crazy publicist.
Yeah, she was roommates with Dana Gould.
Right.
For a while in a house in Hollywood.
Yeah, that house.
And we'd hang out there a lot. That was before the Dave Rath house came along.
That's right. It was
where we spent even more time.
And she had that other roommate, that girl too. It was all kind of crazy. I remember that I got into a lot of trouble with that, but there was a big party at that house. I remember Apatow was there and Stiller and all those guys. They all seemed to be of our generation. They seemed to be around at that time.
Yeah, and I hung out a lot with Janine and with David Cross.
Right. And then the Rath House and the Ackerman and all that shit.
It was like this whole kind of crowd of comedians who live in L.A. but weren't from L.A. We all kind of came from other places and gravitated towards each other. Just because we all had to live in L.A. for, I would have certainly rather lived in San Francisco, but my career was I was already getting stuff on TV, so it was like, LA is the place where you have to.
What were the first
live.
TV ones? Evening at the Improv. I know you guys.
I did Evening at the Improv like 6 times.
I know you guys treated it like it was just a gig. Like I remember when I came out here for my first Evening at the Improv, '89. It was the most exciting thing I'd ever done up to that point. And you guys were walking in and out like.
Who was your celebrity guest host?
It was the jazz singer Nancy Brown, and then I think her name was, and then the other one was the mother from the Wonder Years.
Oh, yeah. Blonde lady.
Yeah. Both of them fucked up my name, and they had to reshoot it. Like, I did it once in 89 and once in 91. Who'd you have?
Oh, I couldn't. I did it 6 times. I know Jack Hay was the host one time.
Yeah.
And the black bailiff from Night Court, I think, was Charlie Robinson. I think he hosted one. The dad from Major Dad hosted one, I think.
But you guys treated it like it was just another night. Like, I remember you guys...
because we were used to doing sets at, they taped it either at the Improv in Hollywood or the one in Santa Monica, and we were used to doing sets there and stuff.
That Santa Monica one was huge.
Janine was also, I think it was her first Evening at the Improv that we were both on.
Yeah.
I think that was with Jack Hay, and then, because they got pretty big names to host then it got worse and worse. Jack Hay used to be a big name. But, Sarah Silverman's first Evening at the Improv, I went with her and hung out with her backstage.
Like 92, 91?
Yeah, I guess so. I'm terrible with years. I don't really compartmentalize.
Well, what were your first TV jobs? Because I remember, you were always working. I never quite understood how people in LA made a living. Because I didn't live here. I went from New York to San Francisco. I avoided Los Angeles until 2002 was the first time I lived here after I left from the Comedy Store when I was a kid.
Right.
So, I always knew that everyone seemed to be doing things. I knew you were doing stand-up, but weren't you involved with a lot of shows?
Yeah, I worked on, some MTV things.
Yeah.
Brian Posehn and I used to be like a team. We worked for MTV for a while, and then we worked for Disney for a while. Like, just trying to create shows. And,
yeah.
And I bopped around a lot, writing for a lot of different silly game shows and.
Really?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I had a lot of weird writing jobs.
Like just what kind of writing was that? Was it joke writing?
Yeah, jokey questions for a game show. Like I wrote on a thing called Rodeo Drive, where all the questions had like celebrity gossip weaved into them, and then a thing with Wink Martindale called Debt.
Yeah.
It was kind of like a.
Did you hang out with Wink?
It was kind of like Jeopardy. Didn't really hang out with Wink. Got to watch him tape the show or whatever. He was very professional.
He seemed like that. Those kind of guys are always weird when you meet them because they almost seem plastic.
Yeah, and they don't dial it down. I said it again. They don't turn it off when they aren't being a host. They're still like, "Hi, I'm Wink."
I know.
Right?
Like
it's still very like a living Ken doll.
So you're able to make a living doing that because what always surprised me.
Well, I stretched. I got by. For the first 6-7 years I lived in L.A., I always had a roommate or two.
Who were they?
And none of them really amounted to much of anything. But at the time,
Were they comics?
no. My first two roommates were kind of a producer type guy who he did go on to produce Xena Warrior Princess in New Zealand or wherever it was they shot that. And the other roommate, it was funny. I moved in to this apartment where there was 2 bedrooms
In Hollywood?
In Hollywood, and a futon in the living room. And I slept on the futon and paid $250 a month or something for the privilege of doing that. But it was a really nice building with racquetball courts and a pool. So it was when I was out of work, it was also being on vacation.
Yeah.
And but one of the roommates was this guy Rob Stone, who just shortly after I moved in got a pilot and then a series. He played the oldest son on Mr. Belvedere. So suddenly, my roommate is like a TV star, certainly from my perspective, he'd really made it big, and all the problems that he had were all so minor compared to, me scraping together enough money to sleep on his futon. And, it didn't take long after, but it took long enough. If I were him, I would have kicked me out the second I got the job. You don't need a third roommate on the couch when you have a TV show. But he let me stick around for a few seasons. Yeah. Or a year and a half.
Did you go to the set and shit?
Yeah, went to tapings every week.
What, just to eat?
One time I sat next to Alyssa Milano. It was the greatest day of my life, even though she was, 4 or 5 years younger than me, and I couldn't really, make a move or anything. I was still very excited to be hanging out next to her and making her laugh while we were watching whoever the horrible warm-up comic was. When I was in high school and college, and then the first few years I lived in LA, I used to go to TV show tapings a lot, and so I used to see Saget and who are some of the other guys, like lots of guys that are pretty big comics. I used to see them do warm-up.
Oh, really?
Saget did the warm-up for Mork and Mindy.
Really?
Yeah, and I thought he was hilarious because all he did was fuck with the crowd and do his thing. He didn't say anything really dirty, but he would be kind of risque in a way that you'd be titillated by because you're sitting at a taping of Mork and Mindy.
You went to Mork and Mindy taping?
Yeah. I saw tons of sitcoms from around that time. I would go to the tapings.
You would just sign up? How did that work? You get online?
From San Diego, I just get in some sort of tour bus.
Yeah.
That was we're going to Three's Company and high school.
Really?
That used to be a high school thing. They would take us to see TV show tapings.
So you saw Mork and Mindy.
Yeah.
Now, do you have memories of how Robin behaved in between? Was he fucking around? Was he?
I think I just bought the whole thing. I just loved it.
I
loved
what other tapings
everything
did you
that was
see?
happening because I loved that that show at that time. And I remember Pam Dauber had this tight pink sweater on. I thought she was amazing looking.
Yeah.
But one time I think a high school, we went up to see a taping of Three's Company, and there was some sort of booking mistake where there wasn't enough room for us in the studio, so they put us in another studio and turned monitors on. So we essentially just watched. It was almost practically like just watching it on TV as a group, but we drove 3 hours from San Diego to do it. But then afterwards, all the cast came over. And this was probably, Ritter was probably responsible for this. Because every time, I ran into him 3 times when he was alive, and every time he could not have been a nicer person.
Uh-huh.
And all in really weird circumstances whenever I'd run into him. But this first time, he and Suzanne Summers and Joyce DeWitt, they all came out and talked to us and answered questions. And it was just a group of 20, 30 high school kids.
Oh, my God.
So we almost got a better deal because we got a private audience with them.
Yeah.
But the thing none of us could get over is Suzanne Summer had the most nasty camel toe that I had ever experienced. She was just wearing these really thin silk kind of pants, and they could not have been pulled up further into her snatch. It was amazing.
And everybody was
mostly it was the girls that all pointed it out because the girls were more shocked by it than the boys.
And were you guys all looking at each other trying not to laugh?
We couldn't believe it.
Oh my!
Yeah, that was the talk in the bus all the way home.
And it was all you could see. I'm sure.
I think she even kind of laid down on the stage in a really awkward way. Yeah, it was.
So you saw Three's Company, you saw Mork and Mindy. So was that in your
one day at a time I went to, and then of course a lot of shows that never that failed. Oh, Bosom Buddies! I went to Bosom Buddies once.
Yeah,
that was neat because I was totally into Tom Hanks and Peter Scolari from from the second that show came on, I was like fans of those guys.
So this was like, you really sort of came into show business like thinking that was it. I mean, outside of stand-up, you were almost like familiar with the way that shit worked. I mean, if you go to a taping, you get how it works.
Yeah, well, I went to tapings a lot, and then just all the different kinds of jobs that I did when I was struggling ended up being, somewhat educational, because I was an extra in a lot of stuff.
Really?
And then I was a stand-in in a bunch of stuff.
Like what?
Like,
you just signed up to
if you know where to look, you can see me like in Blade Runner. That was one of the first ones I did. You could see me in Fast Times at Ridgemont High. About Last Night, there's a scene where Jim Belushi and Rob Lowe are arguing in a bar, and then one of them, I think Rob Lowe, like leaves, but he kind of brushes past people. Like that was my MO. If it was a crowd scene and an actor was going to be super, super method about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And not, and like actually push you if you got in their way, I would do that. Like Harrison Ford had to push me out of the way a few times in Blade Runner. And then, Rob Lowe brushed up against me in About Last Night. And I turned and look at him like, what's your problem? Like really overacting, terrible.
You would get in their way on purpose?
Yeah. Or, I'd scope out the scene. Like in Blade Runner, she's trying to find the robot on the street, and he's chasing her down the street. And so, like, he was like, if you could see if anybody got in his way, he would grab them and throw them out of the way. Yeah. And so me and my buddy that were both working on the movie, we just, got in his way whenever we could. And,
more than once?
Oh yeah. Like, cause that became the thing. Like, well, we'll be in the movie probably. And it's funny, the shot of me that you see in the movie, I'm just walking along and Harrison Ford's like near me, but he doesn't touch me or anything.
But isn't there an issue with editing where if they keep seeing you in different scenes?
Oh, well, that's, like Jim Belushi, speaking of Jim Belushi, he went on Letterman one time and showed a clip from The Fury.
Yeah.
In The Fury, there's a scene on the beach where he keeps popping up in all sorts of different places because he, refused to, like, follow the rules and was just trying to get on camera.
That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, but people don't notice extras generally, so...
So what, you just signed up to be an extra? You just show up at casting?
Yeah, I signed up with a bunch of different agencies, non-union, extra work. Most of the things I did, I got like $50 a day. I worked... you can't see me because it's like a big gymnasium scene, but I worked on Teen Wolf.
Yeah.
And just lots of the classics.
Yeah, that's fucking hilarious.
Yeah, and then I started working as a stand-in, and my first big stand-in job was I was Patrick Dempsey's stand-in on a movie. While we were making it, it was called The Woo Woo Kid, but then when it came out, it was called In the Mood. And it was shot all in Los Angeles over like 90 days, and there was maybe like 114 locations. It was a really ambitious movie, and so and he was in every scene. There was only one scene he wasn't in, and in that scene I was an extra. So I was just with production from beginning to end. Yeah. A lot of it was pretty boring, but I still got to see a lot of how things work. And, so it was pretty educational.
Now, when you, but it's weird.
And I haven't run into him in forever. I'd love to see Patrick Dempsey somewhere and go, hey, I was that squirrely kid that was your stand-in on that movie.
Is it amazing how long he was, going at it in show business before he actually popped on that TV show? Like, I mean, he'd been around forever. I mean, I remember seeing him as a kid. It always baffles me. Like, I guess because, like, my career has taken a very slow, arguably, I don't know if it's an ascent, but whatever it is, I've never, popped into any other level. I'm certainly no star. But, when you see these guys, like, I had no idea Ryan Gosling was like a Disney kid.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I had no idea about this. Like, there are people, like, it seems to me that you're poised for superstardom because of, how long you've been involved with the movie-making process.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. But, that's the thing about Patrick Dempsey. He's got some, even before he really popped with Grey's Anatomy, he had some things under his belt. Like Can't Buy Me Love is kind of a, teen classic or whatever.
I'm trying to remember what I saw him. Was he not in was he in Bugsy Malone or something? No. That
was much longer ago.
It's a long time ago.
Yeah.
So now with Super Jaime, I mean I don't want to talk about. Yeah, I know you don't like to talk about it necessarily in the sense that like you figured out what your angle is, between the marijuana logs and Super Jaime. Do you ever feel like sort of like chained to it or imprisoned by it or upset about it or do you get tired of it?
I think I'd feel more chained by it if I didn't find other things to do, like my podcast. That it has
very popular. My girlfriend fucking like she spent like the entire day, like every time she sits around, listens compulsively to podcasts and reads gossip, and all day for 2 days she's like, listen to Doug Loves Movies. I'm like, all right, well, okay.
Well, it's who doesn't like movies, first of all, so that's kind of a easy thing to get people to listen to, and then
no, it's a great podcast and people love it.
But once that's. We get off subject sometimes, but it's mostly about movies, and I've loved movies my whole life in a kind of an obsessive, nerdy way. So I found something that I can talk about. Like the stoners listen to it,
right?
And non-stoners alike, know, because everybody likes movies, and I get great guests too.
Yeah,
I'm lucky that I have lots of comedian friends, and now I'm lucky that.
Other people want to do it.
People are starting to hear about it and say, "Oh, I'll do that."
Yeah. I'm getting a little of that too. It's kind of exciting.
You get more of it than I do. You've had some amazing guests.
But it's a very different show.
Yeah, but I mean that's the thing is if people listen to your show first, I think they're pretty comfortable with what's going to go down.
Yeah.
It's not like you just sit here throwing softballs, but you also don't. You're not here to interrogate anybody.
No, or
to make fun of them.
Well, that's the weird thing. A couple of times that I did just by virtue of the guests. Then people like, I have Stiller on, right? And then people after the Stiller interview, they're like, you went easy on him. I'm like, it's Ben Stiller. I'm not 60 Minutes. What am I going to get out of it? Like, when did you kill that man? Did you kill that? I mean, what am I going to do? It's fucking weird sometimes.
Yeah, it is. But that's a great example. Ben Stiller would never come on my podcast.
Why not?
Because there's a live audience there, and I'll say dicky things if it gives me an opportunity to get a laugh.
Right.
Like I just go for it. I'm not going to sit there and like be polite.
Oh, so you think you'd hurt his feelings?
His feelings are easily hurt.
I know.
I started off on the wrong foot with him many years ago when Judd and Janine introduced me to him.
What happened?
We just didn't hit it off because he was, more of a, I've always thought he's very talented and very funny, but he's more of a actor than a like he was hanging out with comedians, but he had more of the sensitivity of an actor. So one night we were at Cantor's and I was like making stupid jokes about some movies that he was in.
Yeah.
The kinds of things I'd say on Doug Loves Movies. And Janine was like howling with laughter.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the night, I think Adam Sandler was there too. Adam and Judd were both like, yeah, you might want to be more careful around somebody like that, because, Ben, I think for a while didn't like me because of that incident.
Well, the thing we forget because of who we are, and I'm sure we both have it, is that there's just egos involved, and that nobody gets that big without having a fairly large size ego.
I mean, you've talked about that with some of your guests. Like sometimes you just hang on to hating somebody for no good reason, just because you just didn't hit it off.
Or they hurt your feelings. It's sensitivity.
Yeah, it's a sensitivity. Yeah.
Yeah, bruised ego.
Yeah, and that's what happened to me with Ben, and he's been super nice ever since, but not the kind of nice where I would expect him to be lining up to be on the podcast.
So how did that,
because opinions come out on my podcast. It's like Doug Loves Movies, and like people say, why do you call it that? And then all you do is sit around and talk shit about movies. And it's like, well, because I love them so much that every little imperfection gets on my nerves, and especially when something's well received like an Avatar, it makes me nuts because I can, to me it's the Emperor's New Clothes, and I don't see it. I don't see what is so great about Avatar.
But have you ever had any situation where, because your podcast, that, someone has in the business, because this is the tricky thing, is being part of the business, that we have to have a certain, tongue-in-cheek, respect for everybody who's in our industry. But because our industry defines culture, there's just this fine line between, making some, good cultural criticism and hurting one of your pals. Have you ever had a situation where somebody who has made a movie or somebody said, fuck you?
Well, no, they have. That's the thing, is they often don't call you up or seek you out to say that thing hurt me. They just get hurt by it and then harbor it and then treat you weirdly when you run into them.
But outside of Ben,
or you're just being paranoid and you think that's why they're treating you weirdly. You just don't know. You don't know what's like when you run into somebody who's like a massive star, like. It's a different experience when I run into Adam, it's like, wow, there's Adam. That's exciting that Adam's there.
Yeah.
And with him, it's like, there's Doug Benson.
Yeah.
That guy talks a lot of smack about people.
Yeah.
I used to be friends with him, but now I don't know if I respect him anymore. But he smiles and says hello.
Yeah.
And then that's it. Like, it's not like.
You have that feeling with him too?
Yeah, for sure. Well, because also he thinks I align myself with people who talk shit about him.
Well, that's the other thing.
You know what I mean? Like, people think me and Andy Kindler like skip to the store together, you know, making jokes about people and then going out and sharing them with the world. And I like and admire Andy Kindler, but I don't agree with everything he says.
Sometimes sometimes with Andy, he's one of the funniest people I know. And then you're sort of like, dude, why? That's going to get you in trouble for no reason.
Right. Well, that's my thing is like, I've said to him a couple times when he's been like on my interruption show, he'll say something like, Tina Fey is bullshit. She's not funny. And I'll just be like, first of all, that's not funny. Like, there's no joke there.
Yeah.
And then secondly, why? Like, I understand, like, there's things that people think are great that I don't think is funny. Like, I've watched that show Modern Family and it doesn't make me laugh.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it's a shit show.
Well,
or that I should go on stage and go, Modern Family doesn't make me laugh. Well, no, you gotta have a take on it. You gotta, and Andy usually does. But I think sometimes he just gets, he's so talented and so misunderstood. Yeah. And so not as famous as he should be. Right. That all of that can eat at you and make you bitter. It can affect your opinions.
No, I know. And that's the weird thing. I had to learn that too, that like, even if you don't appreciate something, you have to appreciate the work that's involved. And if the person is talented, just because what they're doing doesn't resonate with you, you don't need to be like out and out cruel because you're not where they are. Like, there's plenty of comedy, like Modern Family. I don't watch it, but it seems like a lot of work goes into it, and people seem to enjoy the show. The cast is talented, so I don't need to go. They're fucking assholes.
But they keep calling it the new Arrested Development, and to me, it's just not. It's not on that level.
Well, I didn't quite get that show either. But
there you go. That's the thing is, anything you can just not get, right, but you also don't necessarily have to shit on it.
Exactly. I respect
unless
all
it
those
seems
people.
like it's aggressively. Like that's why I want to shit on Avatar is because James Cameron is so confident that he's made a masterpiece.
Well, no,
and acts that way publicly.
Something that pollutes the culture with mediocrity and gets everybody excited. Like, there's something to be said that if everybody likes something, there's got to be something fucking wrong with it on some level, unless it's ice cream. I'm not, but there's a lot of different kinds of ice cream. But there's something about, dumping a big, shiny, piece of shit on the people, and then the people flock to it.
Yeah, and even ice cream's bad for you.
Right.
Even though it's perfect.
So you're saying that maybe you should only watch maybe small segments of Avatar and just.
Well, it certainly is amazing to look at. It looks incredible, but the stories.
Do you ever feel that like you've been, ostracized because of your fucking attitude, or?
I try not to think about that. I try to just do my thing and be friends with the people that want to be friends with me, and I don't try not to get too worked up about.
You could if you let yourself. You have in your past.
I'm also like, if getting rich were more important to me, then I'd probably care more about, playing the politics and being friendlier with everybody. But I'm just not interested in that. I'm not going to have kids to pass the money to.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
There's no real point. Like, you've got a sweet setup here. I'd be happy with this if I were.
Yeah, I get panicking. I get panicky about holding on to it, and I'm not about being rich. I'm about just like making a living and knowing I can make a living. I'm okay with that, But in terms of being political or being aware of how these social networking works, within the business, I'm the kind of guy that I'll lock into it and I'll do it and I'll get to level 3, and that's where I'll shit on the floor. Like at some point, I'm going to shit on the floor. Like, I got into the special room. This is a good place to pee.
Well, I know you didn't want to tell the blender story, but let me just say, from my perspective, when we were hanging out at Dave Rouse, I knew you and had seen you around, and we'd hung out, and there was no issues between us. But I was maybe, always a little bit, from the second I first met you until more recently. In my mind, you've always been not only more successful than me, but also just you have a gift at being able to just get up in front of an audience and get it going and do really well.
Yeah, sometimes.
But in a way that it was just unusual compared to most of my peers.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, the thing I used to say about you, as my snarky comment about Marc Maron was, "Oh, Mark's about to go on and he's going to tell it like it is." Because to me, you're always kind of like more like a hip professor that's like, "Dig this, man." And I'm sure you said "dig this, man" on stage.
I have.
And to me, that wasn't my. And I've grown to appreciate that more. And that's what's great about this podcast is people are really getting to know you.
Right.
And I imagine when you go out on the road now, it's an even better experience for you because you don't have to win them over.
Yeah, it's starting to happen, but then then there's a whole other issue. The whole issue of like they've heard this already. You know, that fear always fucking plagues me.
Well, that's why I'm trying to do a new record every year.
Well, me too.
I've set planted a flag in the sand that I'm going to record it every year on April 20th because that's when I know I can get a captive audience, and then. So each year I have to just flush out all that old stuff and just get that new hour together.
Well, that's what I've been doing. I'm not like Louis. I can't say like, I'm going to scrap the whole other hour and
do not get me started about Louis C.K.
Why?
Because there's not a person I love more and am more jealous of than him right now.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by everything he does, his stand-up and his TV show, and just totally aggravated that someone at FX said to him, "Hey, do you want to do a show? As long as you keep it in budget, you can do anything you want." And you'll have to get notes from standards and practices. You'll have to bleep certain words. But they basically just said, "Do what you want to do."
Yeah.
And now he does it. And,
yeah.
And that's unprecedented in television.
Yeah.
Everybody gets network notes and has to have discussions about every little aspect of their show if you have a show. And it's so like the freedom that he had with that, and then the great work he did with it, instead of just being like, "Oh, they gave me some money, so I've got some friends together and fucked around." Like, it's such a great show.
Well, he's just one of those massively, talented guys that, they gambled on and it paid off for him. And it is rare, but like in terms of his process, like I got to do a new CD. It's my fourth one. But what I'm saying is that like I talk freely on the podcast, so things come out, and then I start to sort of hone them a little bit and build them into routines. So my fear is I get on stage and people are like, "Oh, this story." And
I see that, but the story is going to be honed.
Yeah, different.
And different.
And with an audience.
And they probably, let's face it, a lot of people probably listen very intently to podcasts, but a lot of people are also doing something while they're listening to it.
Yeah, and it's a completely different experience. It's just my own insanity.
Like, but your insanity is stoked by the fact that people will come up to you and say, "You said that on your podcast." Or, they'll call you on things.
Yeah.
Like when I read tweets on stage, they'll be like, "We already read your tweets." And I'm like, "Do you know how many people in this room sits and reads every one of my tweets and then remembers them?"
Everyone.
Like, these are funny jokes, that make an audience laugh, and I think and I enjoy the laziness of it, just looking at my phone and reading them.
Oh, yeah, it's funny. I've read shit off my phone. Yeah, but also, what do they expect? We're not machines? Anyways, do I do okay when I do the interruption? I get more nervous about doing the interruption, not the TV show, because I haven't been on that yet. But like when I do the live show, do I do all right?
Yeah, and you're certainly on my list to be on the TV show.
What's going on with that? How many have you done?
We shot 6, so there was like 18 slots, and it was between me and the production company and Comedy Central. We all kind of had our lists of comics, and we narrowed it down to the first 18. And it worked out great for me because it was all people that I admire and that I'm friends with. Because that's what I do, is I introduce every comic as, and now here's my friend so and so.
Yeah.
Because I want the home viewer to be like not watching it thinking, "Oh, this is a show where a guy's a dick to people."
Oh, of course.
It's like we're playing and having fun together.
How has it all worked out?
Yeah, it's the show. It was a little wobbly at first, and then it got better each time we did a taping. It would come together better. There were little lessons that needed to be learned here and there.
Yeah,
and I'm pretty happy with it, and people seem to enjoy watching it. But I don't know what's going to happen next. We got to just wait to see if they want to make more. But if they want to make more, I would love to have you on, because it's fun to have you on because your act is already pretty conversational.
We end up just talking, kind of.
Yeah, and that's fine. And especially for the TV tapings, we do like 20 minutes with each comic, and then we have to whittle it down to 5 or 6. Yeah, so that gets a little frustrating because I'm kind of having to pick and choose, sit in an edit bay and decide which bits my friend is going to say on the TV show and which ones are going to end up being cut.
Yeah,
and so that's kind of a weird experience, but everybody's been cool. And one thing that I've really appreciated is no comics have come up to me and said like, "How come I haven't been on?"
Except me just saying.
But you didn't say, "How come I haven't been on?" You just said, "I haven't been on."
Yeah.
And we both know that's true. But you didn't
didn't
confront me about it.
No, I mean, look, I know that
it would be fun to do, but it wouldn't change your life in any way.
No,
it's not a big paycheck or a big exposure.
I've been festered about it, and I'd like to do it. But like honestly, when I do that show with you live, The great thing about you is that you're so fucking quick, and you know, like it's one of those things about like doing a talk show. Sometimes, you know, I'll drive things into the ground, you know, not by repetition, but just sort of like I'll hope there's a joke at the end, and then it doesn't happen. But you're always pretty reliable. you're gonna at least, you know, not
say something snotty at the end and get a laugh.
Exactly. But so I'm not resenting you. I'm a little uptight. I really wanted. I don't understand why Conan hasn't had me on, but that's another issue. You know, it's like a loyal.
Well, he's been having interesting choices so far.
Well, I think they want new guys,
but also there's been a variety aspect to the stand up.
That's true. Yes,
You know,
Acty, you know, John Doerr.
John Doerr
Reggie
had
Watts.
Rain come down on him. Reggie Watts had the whole band behind him.
And Brendan what did Walsh do? Anything?
I don't know. He probably just had a crazy beard.
Yeah, that beard prop.
I haven't seen his set yet, but I heard he was on it, and I want to see it because he's one of my favorites. I like that guy.
He's a funny guy. But now, your folks, are they still around?
My mom is.
And how does she feel about where you're at in your career and Super High Me and this and that?
She likes it. Like my dad was alive when I did the marijuana logs, and both my parents were like, that's when they found out I smoked pot.
Really?
Yeah. They didn't know till then.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I had to I basically wrote them a letter. Hey, I'm going to New York. I'm moving to New York for a period of time because we were putting on an off-Broadway show. So it was like, and they're like, oh, what is it? You know, it's the marijuana logs. And they were like, oh, okay. And we never really had a conversation about whether I smoke or not. They just know that I talk about it a lot in my act and in these plays and movies and stuff.
Uh-huh.
And so it's just sort of like, it's so bizarre because I went to see my mom for Thanksgiving and she never says anything about it. She's just sort of like, okay, that's just something he does and seems to be getting him some, some success because of it. So she doesn't, and she doesn't notice in the Benson interruption animated opening that I've red eyes. Like she doesn't notice stuff like that because she's,
That's so weird. So it just sort of goes unspoken, and you don't feel like it. Yeah.
We've never had one conversation about she's never even said well, so how much do you smoke, or or is this just an act, or she's never questioned anything about it.
How much do you smoke?
All the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wake up.
Yeah, I have a vaporizer in my kitchen.
Yeah.
And I fire that thing up whenever I'm at home. And
have you ever been too high to work?
Mm-mm. Sometimes I've freaked out a little bit.
Like, how's that?
I've told this story before. One time I was too high to do a corporate gig where I had to host a battle of the bands between Vanilla Ice, Sugar Hill Gang, Thomas Dolby, and two other act, Tiffany, and there was one, Tone Loc.
Yeah.
See, I remembered all five.
That's good.
Yeah. But I was crazy baked when I had to host it, and there was all these. It was like this party for a company that was trying some new texting thing. So everybody at the party were told on their phones to vote for those 5 acts. And each of those acts came out and I hosted. And every time I came out, the audience would just talk amongst themselves and fuck with their phones.
Yeah.
And I was just so high, I just could not appreciate the experience at all. I was just I couldn't strike up a conversation with Vanilla Ice or Tone Loc, even though these people are around, and it was really fun to hear them all play, and they all just played 2 songs, so they all played their hit and their follow-up.
Yeah.
And Vanilla Ice won. He won the contest. But it was, I was too high to deal with it.
I probably would have been it would have been difficult to deal with not high.
Well, that's the other thing, is I'm just bad at that kind of stuff. I don't, that's what I love about my podcast is I'm a terrible host, but it's my podcast, so I can fuck up things all I want, and we just sort of send it out there, and then people listen to it.
The Marijuana Logs, now, do you, is that published as a play?
There's a book where we had to write a lot of extra material because just the play wasn't enough to fill a book.
But, could you tour it like The Caveman? Could you get other comics? I know other people have been in and out of the roles, not unlike the Vagina Monologues, but I guarantee you events where it makes a fucking buck every time it's played anywhere. Yeah,
they do shows of it, and then it's also community theaters and other, groups in other countries have done it. You can just
do you get money?
You can license the rights. It doesn't end up to be much.
Oh. Ari Shafir says, have you ever met anyone with bigger tolerance than you?
Yeah, I have.
No one's going to mention names.
No, there's lots of people that have a huge tolerance. Like to me, like we mentioned him earlier, Greg Proops is amazing. How smart he is.
I have no fucking idea how he does that. I mean, even when I smoked pot, I was fucking retarded. I've seen you fairly retarded before.
Oh yeah.
But I'd get like completely disjointed, and Proops would get me high to make me disjointed. I don't know how he fires on all those cylinders with that amount of pot in him.
Well, I think he generally smokes after his show, but still, and all day. But you know what I mean? I don't think he takes a puff right before he goes on, but he can, and he's still hilarious.
All right, so
what have we learned here today?
We've learned a lot of things. I feel like we've, I got to know you better. I like all the stories about going to tapings, and I like their talk about other comics and resentment. I like that stuff.
Yeah, me too. I like, I don't have the time to listen to lots of podcasts, but I've listened to, several of yours all the way through, because that you make, it's an interesting conversation, like, because it's inside, but it's not, anyone can listen to
right.
it
and isn't
not,
it weird,
not
though,
feel left out or whatever.
But isn't it weird? Like, I mean, I talked to you this is the longest time this is the longest amount of time we've ever talked about anything ever in the 20 some odd years we've known each other. And I find that, like, sometimes when I talk to people here, even though I've known them a long time, I've never had a conversation with them. So I have to assume that when somebody like you or another comic listens to it, you're like, I know that guy. And then you're like, holy shit, I never knew that.
Yeah, and it's just, there's a narcissistic part of it too, where you're sitting there waiting for your name to come up, or, because it's all people and you never know when they're going to tell a story. But yeah, and that's what I didn't get to earlier, the blender thing.
Oh, yeah.
At that time in our relationship as friends or colleagues or acquaintances, when I was in the kitchen and I turned on the blender and I screamed my hand, and then you laughed and told me how funny you thought it was,
yeah.
I thought you were fucking with me. I thought it was like, ha, that's the funniest thing I've ever heard, after I told after I said some lame thing that didn't make because no one else laughed. You were the only one that laughed.
I think I might have been the only one who registered it.
And then when you bring it up every time I see you, I'm like, is he still fucking with me? And then eventually I grew to understand that you genuinely thought that was funny and have always appreciated it.
Well, what the weird thing is that, like, there are moments in comedy and in life that were something, the timing of it was just the timing of it that was just ridiculous. I don't know why I'd been up all night. I remember I showed up there with Rhodes or somebody, and you guys were all, like, riding bikes into pools, making margaritas, and it was just like the air was sort of empty, and you just hear this blender, and you just like, out of my hand, and it was just a beat. And it just, like, there were moments like that in my life where I remember I just laughed my ass off. I can't get it out of my head.
Well, I'm glad that
so it was a genuine.
That brought you so much pleasure, and that we also
bring it up every
came
time.
To an understanding.
Yeah, finally.
About it.
And I always wondered why you, like, hated every time I brought it up, is because you thought I was fucking with you.
Well, but then when once I realized you weren't fucking with me anymore, then it just became no one else thinks it's funny. Like, Kara Kilgariff always has this thing that whenever she's around me in a comedy situation and a microphone, she'll tell, I remember this one time Doug Benson said this, and it doesn't make anybody laugh. So it always makes me cringe that, like, she's quoting me, and then it doesn't make anybody but her laugh, because it just hit her a certain way.
Well, that was such a timing thing. It's not the kind of joke that you could read on paper. I couldn't write that down.
Well, that's what I mean. That's why I was always like, why are you bringing it up? Because it's not going to make anybody laugh now.
All right.
Because you had to be there.
All right. Well, I think we've got closure on it. I won't bring it up anymore. But it was a great moment.
It's going to come up again.
All right. Thanks, man. Well, I think that's a little more insight into Doug Benson than I had any idea about. That was a nice chat. And you know what? Doug's a great guy. He's always been a good guy, and he's always been a funny guy. And I'm glad he stopped by the garage to talk to me. I don't know if you know this, but we got these new T-shirts, American Apparel T-shirts, that you can get at WTFpod.com under the merch section. Nice, pretty, new American Apparel T-shirt in more sizes, and I'm not shipping them out of the garage anymore, so they don't smell like cats or coffee or my garage. You can also, at WTF Pod, kick in a few shekels. We are a listener-supported operation. You can also go to the link for justcoffee.coop. Get yourself a deal on that. If you get the WTF blend, I get a little bit of jack for that. So keep that in mind. Good stuff, good coffee. PunchlineMagazine.com. The top 10 comedy CDs for the year are listed up there. So check that out. Thank you for listening. Oh God, I'm drained. Thanks again for coming out. I'll be peppier. I don't know. I'll talk to you Thursday.